enormous responsibility is on the shoulders of anyone who is lucky enough to be successful.
Perfection does not exist. There's a story behind every story.
I saw hope and possibility in life and love and meaning inside of the difficulties.
This is my story, and this is my life, and I can't hide it.
The shock of the impact of what you actually seen and smelled and touched, it stays with you.
Every single person can make a difference in the world, and every little thing counts.
I'm a guy who want to write his own story.
As the founder of the Virgin Group of companies, Sir Richard Branson isn't just a business magnate and master brand builder. He's also one of the coolest billionaires on the planet. His approach to business is often unconventional. Creating sensational guerrilla marketing events, he fearlessly jumps in head first. And his approach to life isn't much different. Now his daughter, Dr. Holly Branson, a young woman filled with passion and intelligence, has joined him in the family business. Together, they are a force to be reckoned with, committed to leaving the world better than how they found it. True examples of shameless idealists.
I have a mother that was a great believer in pushing her children and trying to make sure that we stood on our own 2 feet, as she put it. And there was one time that we were driving to my grandmother's house, and she pushed me out of the car about 3 miles before we got there and told me to make my own way there. Now, I think you ought to know that I was about 5 years old at the time, and I think today she would have got arrested. But anyway, so I headed off across the fields, got completely lost, and ended up at a farmer's house. And I think by then my mother began to realize that maybe this was one step too far.
Fortunately, my mum would never let my dad drop me off and put me in the middle of the street at 5 years old.
A lot of the way she brought us up turned out okay. I did make us stand on our own 2 feet. We were a very close family, and we had lots of love and lots of praise as we were being brought up. That gave us lots of stability in our lives. So I think that we were very, very fortunate. I'm dyslexic, which means that I wasn't, very good at conventional education. I'd look at the blackboard and everybody else could understand what was going on in the blackboard, and to me it was a jumble. And so I would sit at the back of the class and be planning a magazine. The Vietnamese War was taking place, and I was trying to start a magazine to campaign against the war. Age 15, the headmaster said, look, you're either going to have to run your magazine and leave school, or not run the magazine and stay at school. Leaving school at 15 without any money is not necessarily a good idea, but I had a vision. I wanted to start a national magazine for young people, run by young people. So I managed to sell enough advertising that enabled us to get the magazine going, and we managed to sell some 50,000 copies of the first issues. And although we didn't make a lot of money out of it, it was my education. It got me up and going. And then one thing led on to another. I heard a tape from a young artist and loved their music.
Plus, tubular bells.
Went around to record companies, tried to get them to release the record. Nobody would, and so I decided to form a little record company and put the music out, and it became very successful.
The label released popular albums that defined an era of rock and roll. Meanwhile, Branson was already thinking about his next conquest.
If I see that something's not being done very well, I'll give it a go. So I used to fly a lot on other people's airlines and found the experience was dreadful, and thought, maybe I'll try to buy a second-hand plane, and managed to persuade Boeing to let me have a second-hand 747. If you build a company from scratch and you don't have financial backing, there's only really one word that matters, and that's survival. And for many years, we were just fighting to survive. I suspect the most frightening moment was, when I launched Virgin Atlantic, the airline. We had just the one plane, and we came back from the inaugural flight, and I found my bank manager sitting on my doorstep. And the bank had decided to foreclose on the whole Virgin Group because we'd gone a tiny bit over our overdraft facility. I've never felt so angry in my life, so I sort of picked him up and just pushed him out of the house, which is not a very wise thing to do to your bank manager, and told him he was never welcome in our house ever again. And then I went back inside, and I was just shaking in, sort of anger. Well, fortunately, over the weekend, we managed to scrape and borrow some money from around the world, and we managed to build the company very successfully. But we came that close to being bankrupt. And over the years, we've sort of set up something like 350 different companies, but trying to go in and shake up big conglomerates in different sectors, and give them a prod in their fat bellies and do it slightly differently than it's been done before. One thing that I've always done is work from home. You can work from home, you can see your kids grow up. So, literally, Holly would be crawling around, or occasionally might be changing the nappies, or whatever, having meetings, just building our companies. And the great thing with having our kids around us was we were a very close family.
We had a very, very normal upbringing, apart from the likes of Mick Jagger wandering through the house, or famous people coming through our house. But to us as kids, you don't notice that. You just think it's a normal life. We like to spend time together with family. Family's really important to both of us.
Where are you going?
Up there. Dad's idea. We like to find the adventures in life.
Maybe I'm slightly more reckless than her.
Yeah, definitely more reckless.
While Virgin Records was making rock and roll history, Sir Richard Branson set his sights skyward. But how would he compete with the large, established companies that had long dominated the airline industry?
When I decided to launch the airline, I met up with somebody called Sir Freddie Laker, who'd had an airline before that had been driven out of business by British Airways, called Laker Airways, and I asked him for some advice. He said, look, you're never going to be able to get the money to spend the advertising to beat British Airways. What you've got to do is use yourself, get out there and make sure that you get on the front pages of the newspapers. And believe it or not, I was quite shy in those days.
But Sir Richard realized the only way he'd be able to generate publicity for his companies was to overcome his shyness and grab some serious attention.
I was soon attempting to break the transatlantic record for the fastest boat across the Atlantic. Of course, it sank. And then I was trying to break the record for the first crossing of the Atlantic in a hot air balloon, and of course, it sank. and then we were trying to cross the Pacific, be the first people to cross the Pacific in a hot air balloon, and we missed Los Angeles, where we were aiming for, by 3,500 miles, and ended up in the Arctic, and once again on a lake, and got once again rescued by helicopters.
I do remember the around the world balloon trips. I was about 15 then, so that's when I was starting to realise that he may never come back. But I remember feeling pretty worried about those.
And although we weren't always successful, even when the boat was sunk in the water, the Virgin sign was still sticking out of the water. And somehow I think the Virgin brand became respected for adventure, the adventure side, pushing the limits.
They're jumping off the buildings. I think he's just a bit silly, but I know he's going to be finding things like that.
Hold on a minute, she's doing some of these things with me now. So
Actually, I do like the adventure. I think I weigh up the pros and cons a bit more than he does. He just says yes, and I actually think about it a little bit. We actually had quite a fun trip trying to break the world record sailing across the Atlantic. That was pretty hairy. We got on the sailing boat and we knew we were heading into a hurricane, and the hurricane was going to push us all the way to England from New York. And
It caught us up.
Yeah, it did catch us up, and it was a pretty hairy trip.
Well, we're doing our best. We just got into weather that is perhaps a little bit too strong for the boat.
But unfortunately, after 2 days, we had to abandon because our mainsail had ripped. But it's quite fun doing those trips together. And my brother came on that one too, so it was a real bonding experience.
Oh, it's great. Look, you know, it's lovely to be able to do these adventures and have Holly and Sam do them with me. And then, of course, next year we also, hopefully, will go to space together, so that can't be bad. Did you hear that? We hope to go to space together. That can't be bad. We're building a spaceship. That's pretty unreal. It is, yeah, we have to pinch ourselves.
You'd think that space would be the final frontier, but not for Sir Richard. He's got other far-reaching ideas.
80% of the species on Earth in the sea that have never been discovered, I might think, maybe we should try to build a little submarine to go and, you know, to the bottom of the oceans and find these species. And maybe we should find a technician to see whether we can overcome the pressure, this enormous pressure on this submarine at the bottom of the seas, 37,000 foot underwater. Pressure of maybe 1,600 times more than the pressure on an airplane. And anyway, so you start asking all these questions and thinking, okay, let's give it a go. And let's see if we can't, you know, find the technicians to build the submarine, to make it possible to go and find these species and see what's going on down there. If you're determined enough, you can fulfill your dreams. The kind of wealth that goes with being a successful business person could be viewed as obscene. And therefore, I think an enormous responsibility is on the shoulders of anyone who is lucky enough to be successful and is lucky enough to, you know, to have created considerable wealth through say, running a business. But the responsibility is gigantic, and the responsibility is that if you've got that kind of wealth, you've got to reinvest it in creating more jobs throughout the world, particularly in countries where they desperately need jobs to be created. You've got to invest that money in tackling some of the, you know, most fundamental issues in the world. It's incredible to be in a position where you can make a difference to, you know, hopefully, you know, thousands and thousands of people's lives by existing and by, you know, by being ready to say yes.
From the very beginning, Sir Richard Branson has been motivated by his social conscience. This clearly runs in the family because his daughter, Holly, is equally driven to make the world a healthier place.
I was fortunate that my daughter didn't inherit my dyslexia, so you know, she's the bright one in the family.
Ever since the age of 3, my mum always says that if she asked me what I wanted to do when I was older, I'd say I want to be a doctor. And I think as a young person growing up, it makes life so much easier when you have that drive to want to do something. And I absolutely loved it. 6 years at medical school and then working within the hospitals in London. And then I did an even more different thing and left to go and work with my dad. Stepping away from medicine to business was quite a daunting experience because it's such different environments.
I didn't want to, at any stage, try to persuade her to come into the company at the time that she was training to become a doctor.
But Holly inherited her father's passion for change and joined the Virgin team in a non-profit arm of the company, Virgin Unite.
I've seen the wonderful projects that are happening everywhere, and you just want to make the most of it and get out there and try and help as many people as possible.
I think she can, you know, put her medical training to good use and her good brains to good use to try to make a real difference in the world.
Virgin Unite tries to focus on harnessing all the energy of customers and employees. Coming into a company that is so diverse and employs about 60,000 people, It's amazing to think about if you harness all those people's energy for the future, you'd be able to do some really great things in the world. Not only would I like Virgin to keep growing as a company, but I'd love all those people to volunteer, raise money, increase awareness about charitable things around the world. And I'd love that to grow in the future.
In 2011, Holly visited some of our Free the Children projects in Kenya.
I got to go and bead necklaces and bracelets with the mamas and see the wonderful medical clinic that they've set up out there that helps many thousands of people. Instead of having to walk miles and miles to go and get healthcare, it's right on their doorstep now. Free the Children will put water into schools, which means children can actually go to school instead of having to walk to the rivers and collect water. They're getting an education in schools that Free the Children have built. I just really feel that on the last night I wanted to bottle up the feeling I had, to truly use it over and over again, because it was a feeling that every single person can make a difference in the world, and even if you're just doing the smallest thing, every little thing counts.
Holly and Sir Richard are taking leading roles in confronting some of the world's most challenging problems.
We're trying to tackle global warming through the Carbon War Room, through the Earth Prize. We're trying to tackle disease in Africa through a Centre for Disease Control that we're setting up. Species that are being threatened in the world, like sharks and lemurs and tigers, through other organisations that we support. Most of these issues are solvable, and I think, you know, with enough determination and enough people wanting to solve these problems, they can be solved. And we just got to, all of us, combine together to try to help get on top of these problems. To be a good leader, you've got to be a good listener. In fact, I think everybody, you know, all the kids watching this program, it's so important to be good listeners. And by being good listeners, I can see situations where, you know, where maybe I can get in and make a difference, or where I can help. Just before the invasion of Iraq, you know, I thought it was wrong for Britain and America to invade Iraq. There was no justification for it, and I spoke with Nelson Mandela and Kofi Annan, two great world statesmen, and asked if they would consider going to see Saddam Hussein and persuade him to go and live in Libya in order to save his country from this invasion. And sadly, the day they were going to go, the bombing started. And as a result of that, you know, Peter Gabriel and myself sat down and we thought, you know, let's form a group of elders, 12 most respected men and women in the world, who can go in and try to resolve conflicts in the world. And the elders is headed up by Nelson Mandela and his wonderful wife, Gracia Michelle, and Archbishop Tutu is the chairman, and they do go into conflict regions and try to resolve them. If you're brought up with a conscience, then I think you'd feel guilty wasting the position you find yourself in. I mean, I'm incredibly fortunate to be able to make a difference to other people's lives.
Richard built an empire from little more than ambition and entrenched values. At a time when he could quit and disappear into a mountain of money, he's more visible and relevant than ever.
It's much more fun in life to say yes than it is to say no. And it's much more fun in life to get off your ass and just go and do things. And as my mother used to say to me, don't just, you know, sit in front of the television watching other people achieving things. You know, go and make a difference yourself.
That's exactly what his daughter is doing. She's committed much of her time to humanitarian causes.
Through Virgin Atlantic's partnership with Free the Children, I have been very privileged over the years to travel with and get to know their wonderful team.
I asked Holly to be a speaker at We Day, an annual event that aims to inspire and engage young people to get involved in social activism.
The organisers weren't joking when they told me there'd be 18,000 of you here enjoying We Day. You are such such a great crowd.
I've never spoken in front of more than a few hundred people, let alone thousands of people, so it was pretty amazing.
I was extremely nervous for Holly, but she seemed to be handling it ridiculously well. So.
This is the amazing thing about Free the Children. They have a holistic view of breaking the cycle of poverty by teaching the mamas to make a living, introducing healthcare into a community, and getting clean water into the school, and also getting kids an education. All of this demonstrates that helping someone less fortunate is not about imposing our standards, our cultures, our beliefs, and our expectations on a group of people. It's about giving them the opportunities to lift themselves out of hardship.
I think it's already in my genes to want to do good in the world. I'd like to think in my lifetime that poverty can be eradicated. It'd be such a wonderful thing to stamp out in the world and make sure people get that few dollars that they need to survive.
I think I can retire now.
Not quite yet.
And Holly's father!
Now I spend much more of my time on not-for-profits, so building, ventures that are not-for-profit rather than for-profit. But the sort of first half of my life built the engine that can help make the not-for-profits work. What I've learned throughout my life in business is that business must be more than just a money-making machine. It's not satisfying for the people who work for a company if all that matters is the results at the end of each quarter and nothing else matters. So if you can turn every single business in the world into a force for good, into an organization that really wants to go out and make a difference in people's lives, then I think the world can get on top of most of the problems that exist today. We're trying to lead by example at Virgin and trying to encourage lots of other companies to join us.